Simon Dubbins, Unite the Union International and Research, and also the co-chair of Freedom for Öcalan campaign.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
That's a pleasure.
I want to start asking with, can you briefly tell us about Freedom for Öcalan campaign that you've been running for nearly 3 years now?
Yeah, it was a campaign that was set up by a number of trade unions, my own union and the GMB in the first instance. It was launched in, I believe it was February or April 2016. We've now grown to 14 affiliated unions. Nearly all of the major unions support the campaign. Also, the Confederation, the TUC, has adopted as policy in 2017 that it supports the campaign and encourages affiliates to take part in it. And I think we've been growing very fast. We've been getting a lot of attention, and the campaign is without doubt going from strength to strength.
From the coming to the hot topic, the Turkish invasion against northern Syria. So can I get your reaction against this invasion and occupation war of northern Syria?
I think everybody is utterly shocked and stunned at what has happened and been allowed to happen. We were not at all delusional that Turkey and Erdogan wanted to launch this invasion and launch this attack. He has been threatening it, preparing it and talking about it for a long time. I think what shocked everybody was that after Trump had announced in, I believe it was December 2018, that he was intending to pull out American soldiers, there was already at that time huge fear and warnings about what would happen. You'll recall that there were a number of very senior resignations from the Trump administration in protest against it, and it appeared that the position had changed and that they were going to stay. So for this to happen in such a sudden manner, and everything that has followed from it, which we warned about. We warned from the beginning this was about ethnic cleansing. This was about a potential genocide against the Kurdish population. And I think what has become 100% clear is this is effectively an ISIS rescue mission that has been launched by Erdogan, and that should terrify the entire world. All the people in the region, all the people in Syria, but the wider world as well should be aghast and in horror and should be acting to do something against that.
So this is a kind of danger to all Europe and including Britain as well?
I think there's absolutely no question about that whatsoever. We saw and have seen that the Turkish military has actively bombed some of the camps where ISIS prisoners and their families were being held. I think Al-Nisa was the main one where there's been a huge breakout. That doesn't happen by accident. It really poses the question, why has this been done? Are they looking for support on the ground? We know what ISIS are capable of. We know the brutality of them. We are all in a position where we have a huge debt, and we should pay huge honour and respect to the YPG SDF forces, the mixed forces that did so much for everybody to get ISIS under control. So for this to happen now and be allowed to happen and facilitated by the United States is nothing other than a complete and utter outrage.
And coming to reactions from British unions, they made it very clear where they stand in this war, and including your own union, 15 leaders of unions wrote a letter to Boris Johnson about the invasion. Can you tell us a bit more about what was the demand?
Yeah, the letter came about, really, it was the Sunday night, just over a week ago, that Trump made the surprise announcement that they were just going to leave. I had actually been at a Democratic Confederalism conference in Rome that very evening, that afternoon and evening, where everybody was discussing the situation, what was happening. This news had not come through. When I woke up in the morning and was travelling and the news was breaking, everybody was shocked and outraged. So the campaign immediately got in touch with the unions that are affiliated to it with a draft letter, which was quickly signed off and agreed by all involved. And that letter, really, it made it very clear that we found it an outrage, that we called on Prime Minister Johnson to act immediately to condemn the invasion, but most importantly, the letter called for the UK government to support and work with the international community to implement a no-fly zone, and at that time, an international force. The withdrawal was happening, but Turkey had at that point not quite gone in. It happened, I think, 24, 48 hours later. So there was a small opportunity for something, even if it was an international deployment or anything, to stop the catastrophe that we all thought would happen. So we were really pleased that all the union leaders had no problem with publicly demanding that and making it very clear where they stood. So the letter was sent, and lo and behold, until this day, we've received no response from the Prime Minister on that.
Mm-hmm. And also you visited the region with a delegation, and I think it was your second visit, and it was a short while ago as well. So can you tell us, with your observation also, why the British public or international public should support Kurds there? Is it just because they fought against ISIS, or also what they are doing there and the system, the democratic system they are creating there?
Yeah, it was my second visit to the region. I've been in many of the other. I've been in Turkey many times as well, and in Iraq and so on. But that was the second visit within 18 months to Rojava. This visit was, I think we arrived back in late September, I can't remember the exact date, late September time. We had a cross-party delegation from the all-party parliamentary group on northeast Syria. It included a Labour Member of Parliament who chairs it, a Labour peer, as well as two Conservative MPs, and a host of people from the My Trade Union. The purpose of the visit was really to go there and to get a more up-to-date feel for the situation on the ground. And what was confirmed again and very clearly was that the authorities, the administration in the autonomous area, are building a very inclusive society. Every meeting always has a strong presence of women, is co-chaired by a woman. All of the ethnic religious minorities are always present in and have reserved positions in the local administration. What was surprising or very interesting is during discussions with some of the military people, one of them asked what was the difference between then and now. And the two things that really jumped out at me were, interestingly, it actually felt at that moment more stable and more secure because, you know, I think over the course of 18 months, the administration was becoming more established, the services were being provided, people were happier. The other thing that was different was ISIS had now been properly defeated in terms of the territory, but they now had this massive problem of what to do with nearly 100,000 prisoners and family. And that was, at this moment, before the Turkish invasion, they were extremely frightened about what was going to happen, and they were desperate for international help to put these people on trial, as they should be, and to deal with them in the way that is appropriate. So for witnessing the development, the growth of a great system, people that share our values, don't discriminate, include minorities, include women, and a very democratic system, that was grappling with really difficult problems, for Turkey then to launch this invasion, destabilise the area, actually actively try to help some of the ISIS prisoners, I cannot think of many things more in my lifetime that I've found so disgusting and so outrageous as to what the Turkish state has now undertaken.
There is a huge reactions against it, and on Sunday around 15,000 people marched in central London, and you were there. And in your speech you said more need to be done to stop this. So what more can be done to stop Turkish invasion?
Well, I think, they've taken the international community, I think, is pretty much made clear that it condemns the invasion and have made statements, and French President, German Chancellor, UK government even, and so on. Good first step and important. The second step has been many of them have already imposed bans on arms sales. Here's a problem with the UK. As I understand it, the ban refers to weapons that could be used in Syria, but it's not a complete ban. That's a problem. The UK is one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. It is still extremely influential. First of all, they need to complete the full arms sale ban and stop trying to put caveats around it or some sort of nice wording to enable it to still happen. Secondly, and most importantly, there's the issue of the international no-fly zone to stop Turkish Air Force being able to enter Syrian airspace and bomb at will. I know that the Syrian army and the Russians are obviously moving into positions, and we're getting a mixed picture, but I believe the airspace is more closed than it was. But it still appears that the Air Force is active and attacking targets. So we somehow, and the dynamics of how it's implemented may have changed, but it is absolutely essential that the no-fly zone is implemented. I think they then need some huge support in the area on a humanitarian basis. Huge, there's already a massive refugee problem and displaced persons problem. They need huge assistance with the problem of the ISIS prisoners. That needs to be done, and as I see it, nothing concrete is actually happening. And I think the international community needs to be clear. This is a massive crisis, and if we need some sort of international deployment in order to stabilise the situation and stop the aggression, I think people need to give very serious consideration to that and think about trying to move in that direction.
Yes, and lastly, what do you think about the solution, like long-term solution? Because the Kurdish question, Turkey has in own borders. It's been going on for years, and there is a fight going on for 40 years in Turkey as well. So before solving the problem inside, and now they are trying to mess it up more in another neighboring country. So what is the solution in this whole mess? How do you see it?
Look, it's very difficult. I'm reluctant to try and say from outside what the solution should be, because obviously it's for the people of the region to define that. But I think because it affects everybody and the entire world, obviously everyone has an interest in it. I think it's quite clear that Erdogan and the Turkish state and the way they've been behaving in the last few years are doing nothing except aggravating and making the problem much, much worse. The world has to recognise Erdogan has slipped towards an extreme authoritarianism and fascism, effectively, and there is a simple racial, ethnic, call it what you like, hatred of the Kurdish population that's coming through. They've been attacking them in Turkey, they've been attacking them in Iraq, they're now attacking them in Syria. So one thing that has to happen, Turkey has to be isolated and it has to be put under pressure to stop that behaviour. That's the first thing. And I think the problems that Erdogan has in Turkey are massive and huge, and this is almost an attempt to divert his own population away from those problems and to focus on external ones. With regard to Syria itself and, you know, the dreadful conflict that's been happening there, we need to have a political solution, and everybody needs to be at the table. I think what has been outrageous is the attempt to exclude the Kurdish and SDF forces and the administration from those talks. The very first thing that should have happened is they have earned a place at the table, they've paid in their blood, and they've done a service to humanity. They should therefore have a place at the table and recognition for that. I don't think any of the Kurdish political movement are really calling heavily for independence these days. They're talking about trying to find confederal solutions within the existing framework. Self-determination within the existing framework. I think that was possible, and with, you know, it may have taken time, but negotiations, discussions, you had a peaceful area in the area of northeast Syria was stabilising. The other part of Syria seemed to be becoming slowly more stable, with the exception obviously of Idlib. How on earth is it going to help move towards a peaceful political solution on a negotiated basis when we now have Turkey invading, wreaking havoc and violence on the whole situation yet again?
Simon Dubbins from Unite the Union and also the co-chair of Freedom for Öcalan campaign. Thank you for being with us today.